The Herd's Jason McIntyre, I hope I'm saying that last name right. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, pointed out the Steelers cornerback situation as their biggest hole, but also gave an opinion on how they could possibly fix it. Quote, here's a hole, their cornerback situation. Patrick Peterson, who was a fossil at cornerback, and their other guy is a rookie. Then he goes on to say that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be, quote unquote, very bad. And then continued, they do have two good corners, Jamal Dean and Carlton Davis. If the ship is sinking, are they sellers coming near the trade deadline? This could be a team with some pieces to offload, and maybe Pittsburgh goes shopping. There's a possibility the Steelers can add a cornerback later in the season. Let's break this down piece by piece. Let's start with the Patrick Peterson being a fossil and Joey Porter Jr. being the only other option. I think people are forgetting about Levi Wallace. You and Steven talked about him last week, not going anywhere. It doesn't make any sense for him to go anywhere. And you wrote a piece on him. He's entering his contract year, but he's coming off a career best season. Do you look at this and are you as concerned as with the cornerback room as, this guy is with fossil Patrick Peterson?
I mean, Peterson is definitely old in terms of cornerback years in the NFL, but I think that if you look at Peterson's film last season, it shows a player that still has a little bit left in the tank. I don't think that Peterson is necessarily the CB1, the shadow cornerback that he was in the past, like back in his day with the Arizona Cardinals, but Peterson can still play a little bit. Now, is his speed, has he lost a step? Yeah, he's lost a step. But it happened when you're, 33 years old. But I think Peterson can be serviceable. It sounds like they're going to move him around a little bit more. I'm interested to see how his football IQ, his intelligence, shows up in that regard, getting to move around to different alignments in this defense. Levi Wallace, I think you know what you're going to get there. Levi's a pretty solid player, unspectacular, but, the ball skills have gotten better each and every year. Career high 4 interceptions last season. You got two exciting rookies, Joey Porter Jr., Corey Trice. We'll see what those guys look like, come preseason training camp and stuff like that. I like Carlton Davis. I like Jamel Dean.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any way in hell that Jamel Dean ends up getting traded. He just signed a contract. I don't know really where that's coming from, but I know the Bucs made Dean one of the higher paid players at his position, I think relatively recently, either this year or last year. Davis is a little more believable because he only has 2 years left on his deal. He's a top 10 paid corner in the league. His cap hit for this season is only around $7 million, but next year it jumps to $20 million. He's only 27 years old, so it kind of depends on the Bucs. Do they think he's a part of that future going forward? They do save a little bit of money if they trade him at the trade deadline, but there's a lot of speculation there. I like Carlton Davis and Dean. Like I said, both of those guys are capable of playing in press, long, big corners, but I just don't really see that's a wild kind of take for me. I mean, just in general. Here's the deal, too. If they're making a trade at the trade deadline, that means that the Bucs are bad and the Steelers are good. In order for the Steelers to be, we'll say, buyers at the trade deadline to the point where they want to make a splash trade like that, they'd have to be really good. Yeah. I mean, we're talking like first in the division of the AFC North. And if you're first in the division of AFC North, that probably means your secondary is playing pretty well.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and at that point, you have to see one of two things. Like the Steelers, it would make more sense if we were going to, it doesn't make any sense either way. But if we were going to talk, this is a trade right now, then you look at that situation and you go, yeah, if they're not totally sold on Joey Porter Jr. being a starter right now, it makes a little bit of sense. Also, Dean's contract started this season. So he's set to
not getting traded.
Yeah, no, he's got a dead cap hit of $21.5 million. So he's not going anywhere. But you look at, if it was right now, you could make the excuse of, maybe Joey Porter Jr. isn't ready to start or play significant minutes. And at that point, are you going to rely on a 32-year-old Patrick Peterson at all times on the outside? Probably not going to happen. But to come week 8, just like you said, like at that point, one of two things. Maybe they are really good and their secondary is just that bad. Joey Porter Jr. isn't working out right now. Levi Wallace took a step backwards. Maybe Patrick Peterson, Father Time, catches up to him. I could see all those things happening, but you have to be, the rest of your team has to be like ready to make a run if you're going to make that move. And because it's not a William Jackson type of move. It's not a Chase Claypool worked out in their favor, but even that one was more of a, it wasn't really a move the needle type of situation. you go out and you get one of these two guys, like that's your cornerback one for the foreseeable future, where Joey Porter Jr. will be your CB2, and then you hope Corey Trice turns into something, but you've pretty much jumped ship on your plan, your initial plan. And I just don't think that makes much sense later or right now. 26 years old, like I could see it. I could see where people are coming from. But I just think that if you look at the Steelers cornerback room right now, if Joey Porter Jr. does work out, perfect. Cornerback one moving forward. If Levi Wallace has a good year, I mean, in my opinion, I think you extend him. I don't think he's going to be worth a ton of money. And even if he hits the free agency market, like he's not a guy that you'd go out and be like, oh, that guy's going to make, $15 to $20 million next season. That's just not going to happen. So you extend him, and then you hope that Corey Trice turns into something. You hope that Elijah Riley, Shannon Sullivan, James Pierre, I guess. I think Luke Barkoo is a name to watch that could turn into something for this team. But I just think that there's too many pieces of what if for you to be, they're too early in the process to say, let's jump ship right now.
Yeah, I want to see. I'm interested to see how this cornerback room plays out. I've said this several times, but I think that this is the most excited that I've been about the potential depth in the room in quite a while. And that's just because they actually invested in the position more than they have in a really long time in the offseason. So, yeah, I mean, I think some of the concerns with Peterson's age could be valid. We'll have to see what they're asking him to do. And that's a really big thing to watch if you look at what he was asked to do in Minnesota last year compared to what he's probably going to be asked to do in Pittsburgh scheme. It's going to be different, but I think that still, I still think that he's got enough left in the tank to where he's at least going to be serviceable.
Yes.
And I'm excited about seeing how he's going to be utilized.
Yeah, and just like you said, they've invested. I'm going to say it again. I think Luke Barkoo is a name to watch because I think if he works out, I mean, you at least have another option. You know what I mean? With limited experience, I get it, but balled out in the XFL. I mean, I didn't even realize that this guy. I was writing a piece on him this morning. I didn't realize that his really only season of Division I college football where he played defense, he had 9 interceptions. Like that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. Comes in here. He had pick 6 on Mitch Trubisky, a couple of pass breakups. Like he's a name. He's that early impresser, I would say. So I just don't think. I think if we're gonna freak out right now about any position on the Steelers, it's probably not corner. But again, that could, just like you said, that could change. That could change. Do you expect? I think the expectation right now, before we move on, is Patrick Peterson to start on the outside and move to the inside. Do you still hold that? Do you think the safety thing is come and gone? Like, where do you see the cornerback room shaking out for week 1?
I don't really know. I mean, I want to see it from my own 2 eyes because I've said that I think that that's the biggest question mark in terms of who's playing in the slot, early down slot and on run downs, and then, their passing slot nickel on passing down. So I think it'll be different. I do think that Peterson probably will have the chance to place inside some, whether it be the nickel or the dime, and take Cam Sutton's old spot in that package. I do think that when they're in base, like their base 3-4, I think that Peterson will be starting on the outside with Levi Wallace when the season opens. Now, depending on how Joey Porter Jr. plays, not just in the preseason, but when they go to nickel and Peterson kicks inside and, Joey Porter Jr. gets a chance to play outside with those guys, depending on how he plays, he could push himself into the lineup, which would, I think that's a best case scenario type thing for the Steelers in the long run, because you want him to be not just good enough to contribute this year, but, good enough to stay on the field and get that experience, which is going to be really invaluable for him moving forward. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. But I think training camp will give us a good indicator and barometer of kind of what the Steelers are thinking in terms of which packages and which, personnel groupings for the down and distance.
Yeah, I agree. And I think another name to watch in that situation is Keanu Neal. I expect him to move around a little bit. Dimebacker would be good move for that. That's a big dime backer. That's as big as it gets for a dime back. That's pretty much, it's like Ryan Shazier walking out there, but more athletic somehow. Yeah, I think that's a name to watch, but I agree. I think that once training camp starts, we'll see an early glimpse, and then we'll also see the options, which I think is huge. Like, we're going to see who, because you can't just, Patrick Peterson, like we keep saying, he's old. He's not a fossil, but he's an old. And you can't keep him out on the field every snap of a game. It's not going to happen, and it's not going to last for 17 games. So you have to find other ways to get him off the field. And I think that's also where I'm very interested in. Did you see